Hello, historians! Our goal with this video is to talk about what life was like in the West. Remember that from 1801 to 1861, the United States gained a lot of different territories across North America. This light green area shows the size of the United States before 1801. Then Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803. We added Florida after it was ceded from Spain in 1819. In 1845, we get the Texas Territory after it was annexed from being an independent republic. In 1846, we gained the Oregon Country after we stopped sharing it with Great Britain. And then finally in 1848, we gained the California Territory after war with Mexico. As America gains each of these territories, Americans start moving to those territories or to that land. Remember that we talked about this idea of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is the idea that America has a right to the land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. So manifest destiny is the idea that we have a right to the land across North America. And because of that idea of manifest destiny, we start to acquire or get new territories, and people start to move there. Life in the West was different for everybody. The reason you went to the West usually influenced what your life was like out there. Some people went for the availability of cheap and fertile land. Their life was very different from the Native Americans who were forced onto reservations. And the people who went for the California Gold Rush to get gold in California had a very different experience from enslaved African Americans who may have gone to the West for freedom. So life in the West really was different depending on how and why you got there. A lot of people moved to the West to make money off of the land. Here is one advertisement advertising millions of acres in Iowa and Nebraska for sale on 10 years credit. So this advertisement is telling people, hey, everybody in the East, you can't get land in the East. It's hard, it's challenging. Come to Iowa and Nebraska where there's millions of acres available. This is another advertisement. If you want a farm or home, best thing in the West, go to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe railroad lands in southwest Kansas. There were lots of different advertisements like this, telling people that if they came to the West, they could expect to have really good land for growing stuff on a farm. This advertisement even says there's a temperate climate, excellent health, pure and abundant water. We're going to find this year, and especially next year, that these advertisements weren't always accurate. But the Great Plains was flat and boring, as we've talked about, and it was also fertile. Fertile means that the land was good for growing crops. So here we have an image of two farmers on their land out in the Great Plains, and they are using a new invention around this time called the reaper. Joe Anderson and Cyrus McCormick invent the reaper. Here's another image of it. It's a machine that's pulled by horses. And as the horses pull this machine, it is cutting down the wheat on the farm. You can see these little stacks of wheat that have been left behind. And on this side are the stalks of wheat that have not been cut down now. So now instead of people, like the members of the family, cutting down the wheat by hand, there's a machine that can be pulled by horses, and that cuts down the time it takes to grow and cultivate and pick the crops and sell them. This machine, the reaper, increases productivity for farmers. It means that they can be more productive. They can do more, plant more, grow more, and pick more. So one family can cultivate more land as a result of this reaper. Before, maybe one family could take this tiny plot of land and grow and cultivate and sell what they grew. Now with the reaper, they can grow and cultivate more land because they have this machine that will help them. We talked about this idea of manifest destiny, and specifically looking at this painting of manifest destiny, where manifest destiny is represented by this kind of angelic figure in the middle, and it's showing how we are bringing all of these new inventions like steam locomotives and steamboats to the West. We're bringing things like farming and different forms of progress like wisdom and books and telegraph lines. We also talked about how what's happening is that as this progress is being brought to the West, the things and people that were already there, like the buffalo and the Native American tribes, are being pushed off of that land. So this is a GIF that shows the changing population of the Native American tribes. It starts in 1776 when the red area, which represents the tribes, is across the whole United States. And then as time goes on, the location of the Native American tribes are pushed into smaller and smaller areas. As they're pushed onto these small areas, they are placed onto what we call reservations. Remember, when you look at a map, the first thing you look at is the title. The title of this one is American Indian Reservations. And then you look at the map key. So anywhere you see purple, that's going to represent federal or national American Indian Reserves. And anywhere you see a green dot is going to be a state American Indian Reserve. Remember that Native American lands in 1776 were across the whole continent. Today, they are living on these reservations, these purple areas in North America. So they're going to have a very challenging experience with westward expansion, where they are losing land as time goes on. Enslaved African Americans are also going to have a different experience. They are free in most of the West. According to this map key, this light blue area is closed to slavery after that Missouri Compromise, meaning that this blue section of the map is free territory. Slavery is not allowed in this area. The yellow is open to slavery, so the Arkansas Territory, slavery is allowed. And then we have the green free states and the orange slave states. So if you were an enslaved African American in the South and you wanted to escape, you might escape or go to the free territory in the West, where you can access that fertile land and create a farm, or you can be free and not have to worry about being enslaved. Some challenges of the West were experienced by everyone. So yes, your experience differed based on why and how you went there, but these three things were experienced by almost everybody who lived in the West. The challenges of getting to the West, the lack of supplies once you got out there, and the harsh climate and weather patterns that were out there. So we started talking about these trails that people took to the West. There were lots of challenges with going on these trails. Everything you needed to survive on the trail and everything you needed in your new home when you got to the West had to fit in one of these covered wagons. It could take 5 months for you to take this Oregon Trail out to the Pacific Northwest. And not everybody made it, unfortunately. There were lots of things that made it really challenging, like different diseases that you might catch, running out of supplies, your wagon breaking, accidentally going the wrong way, going too late and getting stuck with bad winter weather. There were a lot of challenges. Once you got out there, it got even harder because it was hard to access supplies while you were living in the Western territories. The three things that you see on the screen are things that we live with and use to survive every day. Things like Amazon having packages with supplies and items delivered to your home. Walmart, where you can go into the store and find almost anything you might need. And things like doctors and hospitals are what we use every day and we have access to every day. If you were in the West, you had none of these things. There were some small towns that you could get supplies in, and eventually there are trains that can take supplies out to you in the West, but especially at the very beginning, having access to supplies in the West just wasn't really a thing. And then finally, we have really harsh climate and weather. The Great Plains is really dry. They don't get a lot of rain. And as a result of that, we have a lot of dust storms. This top left image shows a dust storm. All of this kind of smoky area is dust, dirt that has been picked up by the wind, and it is carrying across the Great Plains. Another challenge that comes with the climate is the fact that much of the Great Plains is in Tornado Alley. That still exists today, where there is a lot of really harsh weather patterns, including things like tornadoes, that go through the Great Plains. So, the answer to our question, what was life like in the West? Overall, life was pretty challenging. You had a lot of challenges that everybody experienced. There were also a lot of unique challenges and ways of life, depending on who you were and why you went to the West.